Hey everybody, welcome back to the Arrow panel. Now it's not starting fresh. I'm your host, James McGarren.
Roger Clark, aka @RogerClark on Twitter.
Jeff Lloyd Funga.
And Buzzer, I forgot to mention that. So, just wanted to apologize for being late tonight. We were debugging some audio issues that was edited in post, so you probably can't even see it. But we're back with episode 2. And I just wanted to say thanks to everyone for all the support for episode 1. It was actually it blew our standards for what we thought we could do with the show. There was a lot more views than I expected.
Yeah.
So
it was really surprising to see the response. It was great.
The response was great. It was like almost all positive. So none of the trolls came out last
Not
week.
yet, anyway.
Not yet, at least.
So there's a lot of like AV issues, as you can tell, that we're going to try to fix. So thanks for bearing with us. This is a work in progress.
Yeah, over the next few hundred episodes, we'll,
it's going to get better every time.
We hope so.
So this is a live show. So make sure to tweet your questions at us. We're at SF_evolved. Or post in the chat and join the discussion. Come talk about what we're talking about and be here with us. So we're going to be talking about some topics today, and towards the end of the show, we'll actually do a live Q&A. But in the meantime, let's jump right into some news.
Sure.
So there was some new content last week, Renon's Adventure Part 2 from the May 31st update. So overall, what was your reaction about the event? What did you think? There's 3 new charts.
Yeah, Roger, you want to start off?
Yeah, so we got 3 new charts. We got Come to Life Challenge, the 18. Emera Challenge, the 17, and Start a New Day Challenge, the 16. And there's a lot of variety here. Come to Life, I feel like it's a really great introduction to 18s, and Emera is I think is a really unique 17 in the fact that it has a ton of nice crossovers. It's just a really well written chart. And Start a New Day. Maybe you have something to say about Start a New Day.
Well, yeah. So Start a New Day. I'm surprised that there's an expert 15 for it. And so knowing that there's a challenge chart, I was like, okay, what are they going to do? Is it like shock arrows or something? A lot of people suggested that it might be a shock arrow chart.
Yeah.
Because then at least you get some difference in difficulty. But it turns out it was just a lot streamier. It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's not. I mean, it's a good song.
I think Start a New Day is probably my least favorite out of the 3.
Yeah.
But it is a great song, and the other 2 charts are amazing.
Yeah. So I'll jump back to Come to Life a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's start with Come to Life.
Sure. So, like you said, a great introduction to 18s.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's really important in DDR is bridging the gap between some of the difficulties, and so far that hasn't been emphasized a lot. So in order to get good at 18s, you couldn't really play a bunch of 17s and have it work out fairly well. Like there's just so much stuff.
Too big of a gap between 17 and 18.
You feel confident on some 17s, you play an 18, you're like, this blows my mind. Like it's totally different.
That happens to me every time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So stuff like Astrogazer and Come to Life, I'm really glad are being released because they're like streamier, they're a little bit denser, but they're not so crazy that, like the classic 18 was just like throw a bunch of gimmicks in and throw just like craziness, like crazy patterns that are like Trigger or May, where it's just like, okay, May's straightforward, and all of a sudden Scooby's at 200, or like very fast crossovers.
Yeah, very fast crossover runs. We call those Scoobies.
Yeah. I feel like they're really filling in the gaps here.
Yeah, that's
it's
exactly.
Like if you look at the distribution, like an actual distribution, not the groove radar, because that's not really accurate.
Yeah.
But like that, this one really fills in kind of like two gaps towards the beginning end of the curve of 18s.
And Emera is the same way. There's certainly harder 17s, but it's pretty dense. It's got a lot of crossovers, and it feels like a lot like Rising Firehawk in the sense that Rising Firehawk again was on this easier side of the 17
and
spectrum.
It had something like a technical aspect that it was challenging you on over and over again.
Exactly.
And Emera's doing the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So really love the 2 charts. I think Emera's got to be my favorite of the 3. As much as I love Come to Life, the expert will always hold like a very special place in my heart. Whereas Emera, the 16, the expert 16, I was like there's a lot going on. You could do a lot more, and then the challenge, bam, that's a lot more.
And they did it.
Have you guys noticed that a lot of people kind of shit on Emera for no reason? It's kind of like
we have this discussion a lot. I mean, we like when I first heard it, I wasn't thrilled with the song, but it gets stuck in my head all the time.
Yeah.
I think about it all the time.
Yeah, and I think you said it best. Like if a song gets stuck in your head a lot, like
that means it's good.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of people posting like their scores and they're like, "Oh, this song is such garbo." And I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? I actually love it, and I think the new challenge chart is so fun too.
Yeah.
It's really challenging. It's got some cool crossovers.
One of the
step
things I
drops,
always
too.
love about when new content comes out is seeing everyone's scores as they get posted.
Yeah,
and everyone scrambles to go play the new stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody's
And
playing together, I think.
So you see like everybody who's good, everybody who's at they're starting to get into these harder songs, and they're all excited to play it. It's great.
Totally
Yeah.
agreed.
So we talked about Start a New Day already, I guess.
Yeah. There's not much to say about it. I
Yeah.
guess.
Okay. So the next thing we want to talk about was some of the other new, not chart-related things about the update.
Sure.
So there's a bit of a difference in timing, I guess. I think a lot of people are hearing complaints about the difference in timing, and I thought maybe we'd take a moment to explain to people what the difference is really.
Yeah, definitely.
So-
So basically, from what we understand, there was an attempt at a bug fix in some of the ways that whitecabs handle step input, and something seems to have it seems to have a side effect where it's influencing the position of the arrows, like the Marvelous window, with respect to the targets. So it used to be that you sort of had this like, maybe I should do it this way, like you had like a sort of, the targets are in the middle and you sort of have this space around it that like this is Marvelous and then a little bit wider is Perfect. It sort of branches out from there, but equidistant on both sides. And now it seems like that window is sort of shifted up slightly. So targets look like they're going past the arrows quite significantly, and you can still get a Marvelous. And on the converse side,
Yeah.
like basically it's very close to the targets on the bottom side, and you hit it and you get a Perfect instead.
So it feels like it makes the game feel later to me.
Yeah.
And I feel like Ace already had kind of a late bias. So every time I play, like after the update, I'm getting a lot of early perfects.
Yeah.
Just because it feels a little different. It's
Yeah.
it's still very playable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not broken, I don't think.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I think this was like the biggest complaint that people had with playing home versions, especially on like HD screens. Was like there was always ways to compensate for the audio delay. So
Totally.
like the games always had programming to account for that. But one of the things that's really hard to account for is this visual, like for visual players.
Yeah.
To account for this visual delay,
Yeah.
it's almost impossible.
I think they'll get it right because they got it right before, and
Yeah.
people are talking about it, so they'll probably take care of it. I think.
It's important to note that a lot of people are welcoming this change. They thought that there was a lot of visual lag before, and it's actually a little bit more natural, or what they feel is better for basically playing a little bit later. Because a lot of people thought they had to step too early, and then like the targets move a little, or the arrows move a little bit, and then you sort of get that input. I'm not in that camp, but
Yeah, me neither.
I understand that camp exists.
Well, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? How the difference between like visual players and people who play by sound.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of like a whole nother topic.
Yeah,
for
I was
another
about to say
episode,
we could talk for an hour about that.
But yeah,
I've got a lot to say about
for people that are not familiar, there's like a lot of players that play visually and aurally. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Like, so there's a lot of players that play aurally too. And so it's interesting seeing like people react to the update because like the visual players are the ones that are complaining. The aural players are not so much complaining.
There's basically no difference in actual sync.
Yeah,
of songs.
all the timing is the same.
It's just it looks different as in terms of where you're supposed to hit the arrows.
Yeah. So DelZO says they should add offset like on 2DX and other games.
Would love it.
2DX, yeah, so for those of you that don't know, it's kind of interesting. 2DX in the options screen actually allows you to adjust the offset
Yeah.
for the song. The delay, I guess it's video or visual and audio.
That's kind of crazy.
It's great. It would be great. It would fix a lot of problems people have with just like weird songs being slightly too very off sync.
Yeah, or people, I think, that just don't feel like they are compatible with the timing.
Yeah.
But then again, it kind of de-standardizes the whole thing.
I think 2DX is doing a good job of it.
But yeah, I would love to see that in DDR, maybe at least in through like the eAmusement Premium options
Yeah,
or something
totally.
like that. So there's like a new level overlay that they kind of added.
Yeah, they added on the gameplay screen. Now you can see what level the song is. So
Which is nice, I think, because as a spectator, a lot of times you see somebody playing a chart, and if it's a chart that you haven't seen before,
Yeah.
you kind of want to know, like, is that the
Also, it's kind of
challenge?
nice for YouTube videos.
Oh,
It is
yeah.
Just
very
get
good.
more info in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people used to add that before.
Zero Wolf's videos are getting more information.
Yes,
rich.
of course.
Yeah.
Just throw information on that screen.
Yeah.
So, coming up next on news, we want to talk about some tournaments that happened recently. So that's actually the focus of the whole episode. Is tonight we're going to be talking about tournaments with DDR.
It's all about tournaments.
It's all about tournaments. Tournaments are really great, but let's talk about why they're great by throwing in some real-world examples. So, Roger, you and Jeff went to the Round 1 San Jose tournament on May 13th, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, so it was a really fun time. We had a tournament. The SF Evolved team helped run a tournament at Round 1 San Jose on their DDR Ace cabinet, and it was an interesting time. I feel like over the past year, people have gotten so much better, and the last tournament that we had there, I feel like it was definitely not as tense as this one. Like there was so much that happened between last year and now that like.
Even though we had 43 entrants.
Yeah, 43 people in that
It's
tournament.
huge.
Which
Yeah.
that's a lot of people for a DDR tournament now.
And I don't know if we have any San Jose players watching, but the last tournament we had 2 machines to run it on, and this time we only had 1.
Yeah.
So
So-
a little bit unfortunate, but it went pretty
tournament
smoothly.
went well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So David Hua ran that, and
Yeah, shout out to David.
Shout out to David. He worked really hard on that. I think he did a great job. So we should talk about the results a little bit. So first place. Anybody surprised by first place?
I think a lot of people would be surprised.
It was honestly kind of debatable what was going to happen. I think there's a lot to say about the rule set of that tournament.
Well, we should first mention that it was Jeff Lloyd,
Yeah.
our very own fun
Congratulations to Jeff on
Thank you.
winning the
guy,
tournament.
for getting first place. Yeah.
And second place was Chris Chaik. I'm Chris for Life. And third place was Sappy, right?
So third place was the one that I was most interested in. I thought there was a lot of people I thought could have gotten third place.
Yeah.
It was really up for grabs.
Yeah. Yeah, so like we had a lot of LA players that drove up for that tournament. So we had Sappy, we had JJK, who I remember JJK from Best of the West, which is another fantastic DDR tournament. It was one of my first ones that I attended in the Bay Area. Who else do you think would have been a good contender?
Jerry
for
was
third
a
place?
good candidate.
Jerry,
He got third at the last San Jose tournament in November.
Yeah.
And so
Jerry's really good.
there was it's so cool to see like how many close matches there were.
Yeah.
Because I was just like when I wasn't competing, I was watching everyone else's matches, and there were a lot of one perfect matches.
It was awesome.
I remember one of my favorite matches was Omid versus Jerry.
Yeah.
And they played Plan 8 Expert, and that was the 14. And they both got to the end, like they kind of they kept trading back and forth. Like one person was in the lead, and then someone would mess up on one of the drills, and then the other person was in the lead. And at the very end, it came down to that last drill in Plan 8, and it was the final score was 15 and 3 greats to 16 and 3 greats. So it was literally a 1 EX score difference.
Damn.
And it was
Yeah.
just like it blew my mind.
Yeah, this is why you all should go watch tournaments. Like, if you're not going to compete, we think you should definitely compete, but
Definitely compete.
definitely compete. But like, we'll get into that in a little bit. But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
watching, it's definitely all about these like close matches. That a lot of times it's unexpected. You never know what's going to happen, and those like 1 EX point differences, everybody screams when that happens.
Yeah, yeah,
it's
it's
so
crazy.
so fun.
But do it at the end of the song, please.
Yeah.
Not mid song.
So overall thoughts and reactions about the SF Evolved DDRA tournament, the second one.
I had a lot of fun. I did a lot better than I thought I was going to do.
What did you get?
And I tied Tyler for 5th.
Excellent.
And yeah, I had a lot of close matches. My match with Sappy was pretty funny, and same thing with my match with JJK, the egoism sandwich. that
Oh
we had.
yeah.
And yeah, I had a great time.
So
and
yeah, that was kind of one of the big complaints was the people would have liked to see, I think, the difficulty kind of ramp up towards the end of the
yeah, I
tournament.
think
You
we'll do
guys-
that next time.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
next time you guys think we should do that?
Definitely.
So yeah, so if for those of you that missed it, it was a great tournament. It was gauntlet style, right?
No,
No, it was card draw.
It was- so it was a card draw style tournament. So it was kind of like all the songs were fair game, or it was like 13 to.
It basically the level cap sort of moved up as
Yeah.
like there was like a window, so 9 to 16, and then as you get into further and further rounds, it becomes unbounded on the top side, and the lower cap was 13 in the finals.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about maybe moving it up to 14 or 15, or we'll get into different styles of how you can run efficient tournaments
Yeah.
in a little bit, I think.
Okay, yeah.
What else? Do you have anything else to say about the tournament?
I had fun. I mean,
Yeah, you won.
It was a time for me to sort of prove myself. I feel like, especially with KAC, like losing out on that, having a chance to prove myself a little bit and show I'm still in the running for
Yeah.
for one of the best players. So I like that a lot.
So the other tournament that just happened last weekend, right? Virginia Beach. 27 players attended that one. Who was the one that ran it?
Andy Freak, Andy457,
Yeah.
a good friend of mine from Virginia area.
Yeah.
Also a really good DDR player.
Yes.
Really good DDR player. Nice guy online. Hey, Andy. Hope you're watching.
Yeah.
So let's see. Do you want to talk about the results for that
Yeah.
tournament?
So Brandino was victorious. He was first place. Then
That kid's really good. He's
yeah.
been so good for so long.
Yeah, I guess we can go. We'll go one by one. But Brandino, I remember him from like the Rocky Mount days in North Carolina. Back when I lived on the East Coast, I would drive down to all those tournaments, and he was always just fantastic. And it's awesome to see him, tearing up the game again. There's a lot of players who feel like I feel like I used to play with them back, 10 or 8 years ago. It's like a lot of them don't really play anymore. They don't have
Yeah.
access to a machine. So it's always nice to see like the old school players. I love new school players too, but it's like a healthy combination of both is
Yeah.
very, very good, I think. And then Melvin Rubio got second, and he has just been tearing up ace. Like he's not only an incredibly good singles player, but he has a couple world records on double. And
That's
he's really,
awesome. We need to see more things happen on the double end.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm guilty of that. I play a little bit of double, but I want to focus.
It's hard in the Bay Area.
Yeah,
when the machines are in use constantly.
That's true too. But I always feel like, if I'm playing double, I'm taking a little bit of time away from single, and I really want to be competitive on
Yeah.
that side. So to be able to do both and be very competitive in both is a very good thing.
Yeah, it's very
high
impressive.
accomplishment. And then third was, I think it's Keble. Am I pronouncing that right?
Keble.
Keble. And I don't know much about him, but Brandino told me he's like 15 years old and is this like
crazy.
rising star.
Excellent.
Like to get third at a tournament when you're 15 and haven't been playing for that long. I presume he hasn't been playing for that long.
Yeah, and especially with players like that, going up against people like that like great players that attended that tournament.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing more from him because like it's always like sometimes there's these very, very young players
Yeah.
that come out of the woodwork and they can just do things that like us old people can't do anymore.
Yeah.
So it's really, really exciting to see. And also that it gives a good feeling that new blood is coming into tournaments and the community and everything. Because there needs to be a healthy balance. Like
Yeah.
people are always going to leave. Like old school players are they settle down or they don't live near a machine anymore. Or they just lose interest. So you always need that like funnel of people coming into the game as well. And tournaments do facilitate that a lot.
So
Yeah.
actually, this would be a great transition, I think, into our next topic, which is about our tournament history.
Sure.
And I think it's a good segue because I want to talk a little bit about my tournament history. And I was actually always one of the youngest people in the DDR community in Phoenix, Arizona. And so I felt like, being a young player, I felt like I had to work a lot harder to try to impress my older friends.
It's a good way to motivate people.
Yeah, it's
know?
a really great motivator, I think, and it's also like a good way to break into a social circle.
Yeah.
Which a lot of young people are kind of like just doing that for the first time. Were you also like one of the youngest people in your community?
Absolutely, yeah. I was like 16 and 17 when I was getting pretty good.
Yeah, me too.
And I was surrounded by like low 20s, So I had a lot of good like mentors in terms just like with dance games and otherwise. Like
Yeah.
I felt like it really helped me grow as a person to be surrounded
here.
by so many people who were like so willing to accept a new person and be like, and I got a little bit of credit because I was kind of good. So it was like,
Yeah, well,
this guy's
I
like,
think acceptance has always been one of the best parts about the dance game community because there's so many different kinds of people that you basically just have to accept everyone.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, actually, that's I think that's a whole nother topic. Is like about the community. It's like it's such a colorful community,
Absolutely.
and yeah, like everybody's a little weird, I think, but in a good way, in a way that it's like we accept the niche people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody fits in as long as you can talk about the game.
Yeah.
The thing I was thinking about with playing with older kids too. I remember the story where one guy said that he was graduating high school soon, and he said for his graduation present he's going to get a DDR machine. And this is back in the day when like having your own DDR machine was unheard of.
Yeah.
And so that was really fun. So first tournaments. Do you guys remember your first tournament?
Yeah, my first tournament was at Magic Mountain East in Columbus, Ohio. It's a famous arcade.
Classic.
The Extreme Machine, perfect Extreme Machine. The pads, just amazing.
Beautiful.
I drove, or I had my family drive me like 2.5 hours from my hometown, Ashland, Kentucky, to Columbus, Ohio, to compete in this DDR tournament. And I thought I was really good because I could full combo songs and I was getting double A's on Extreme, and yeah, I was pretty confident going into it. And then my first match, I double A'd the song that I played. The first song was Senorita. I got like 35 greats or something, and the person next to me gets like 4, and I'm like, how is this even possible? People are this good? And of course, I was immediately kicked out of the tournament. I was immediately eliminated, and it was a really interesting experience because, first of all, it taught me that I had a long way to go to become good, but also it showed me that it was possible to do that, and that by subjecting myself to that competition, that's how I would get there. And yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah. I feel like my story is very similar to yours. Maybe this is just like a universal thing, like thinking that you're hot shit and then you go to your first tournament and get destroyed. So I remember I guess I was in my freshman year of high school. This is like 2006 or something. And I went to my first DDR Extreme tournament somewhere in New Jersey. I'd never been to that arcade before. I got my mom to like sign me out of class early, like for a doctor's appointment or something. And I got to go to this tournament, and I was getting like, I think I had like 6 greats or something on My Summer Love, and I was like, that's my song. Like, I'm so good at My Summer Love. And turns out everyone else is also very good at My Summer Love. So I went to that tournament. I knew no one there. I entered. I picked My Summer Love on my opponent in our match, and he triple A'd on me.
Yeah.
And then he picked something hard, and I lost. And that's it. Like, I'm out of here. This, like, 45-minute drive to the middle of nowhere, New Jersey, to play. And
yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
But it was really motivating, because it was like you said, there are people that are this good. Like, I need to be this good.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, like, let this happen again. I want to be the person who's knocking me out.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but it was just like this whole, this like come back down to earth kind of moment where I had this big head and I was like, oh, I'm so good. I wasn't.
I mean, it's all about working up to that first moment when you first beat someone in a tournament. And I feel like the first time I actually won a tournament match, I was like, okay, like the work that I'm putting into this video game is paying off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my first tournament experience was probably actually nothing like yours.
Oh, really?
My first tournament was the Southwest Showdown in Phoenix, actually Mesa, Arizona. And it was a big deal. It was sort of like the whole Southwest area, so that includes LA and San Diego and the Phoenix area. There's a lot of good players. And at the time, I felt like I could not compete with anybody, but I wanted to go anyway because everybody was my friends and it was a good way to hang out. And it was a really eye-opening moment for me too, because there was one particular player that was there, JSB. He was kind of famous in the community in the old days. And watching him play was just mind-blowing. He was far better than everyone else. I remember he triple A'd like Max Unlimited in front of everybody, no bar, like no problem. Which actually, even today, that's
yeah. I mean, I gotta say, I would be very impressed if I saw someone walk up to an Extreme and do that.
Yeah. So he was not even in the tournament. He wasn't even playing in the tournament at the time. I just remember seeing him do that. And yeah, that really blew me away. That kind of showed me like how far you can really take the game.
Yeah.
Because at the time, I also didn't really know that there were people on the internet that were also triple-Aing songs and stuff. So I think that's another thing that you can kind of gather from a tournament is like what the standards are.
Yeah, you
like
just
how
see what's
far
possible.
What's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Also, I wanted to mention something fun about that too. That was probably one of the only DDR tournaments that was covered in a major newspaper by my dad. He was writing an article for the New Times.
That's badass.
And so the Southwest Showdown was actually on the front cover of the Phoenix New Times.
That's awesome.
And yeah, so that was pretty fun. So moving on, that was our first tournament history. Oh, actually, we did have a channel from the chat. Channel Tanoshi was asking about these old tournaments and how do they compare to the tournaments that you're seeing nowadays?
I think people have gotten better at running tournaments in general.
Yeah.
One thing that I think we'll touch on it in a little bit, but I'll give a spiel right now. But back then it was a lot of pick random, which was basically a style of tournament where when you had 2 people coming up in a match, each person would pick one song, and then if it was still undecided, if it was still 1-1, then you'd go to some random song. And sometimes people used the machine random on Extreme or something. Sometimes you had a program that did it for you. But I think that's fallen out of favor a little bit. And now people are moving towards a card draw system, which is basically you take from a pool of songs that might be predetermined. It might be like there might be level caps on it or something. But you take like 5 songs, for example, and each person will actually veto one of them that they don't want to play.
Yeah, they'll say, I don't want to play Love Love Sugar, or I don't want to play,
or
you know.
Egoism 440 challenge.
Exactly.
Right. So you each veto one, and then the remaining 3 are the ones that you play. And I have I'll talk about my opinions about which one is better in a little bit, but that's kind of, I think that's probably the biggest evolution of.
Yeah, I think back in the day when people were first starting to run tournaments, it didn't really occur to them that you could do anything other than something based on playing the game in a versus way, right? Like, normally when you go up and play DDR with someone, you pick a song, they pick a song, and then the third one is either a random one or you go back
flip
and
a coin
forth,
or
right?
something, yeah.
And of course, when you're first starting to come up with a tournament format, that's the first thing that occurs to you. So that's what everyone did.
Yeah.
And then they realized, wait a second, like, actually what happens in this situation is someone picks a song they're good at and wins, and then someone else picks a song that they're good at and wins, and then it's actually the third song,
It's
the
really
random,
that
that
matters.
actually determines anything.
Totally.
Well, I think one of the biggest differences too, the impetus for the card draw system and stuff, is we have just a lot more songs to play.
Yeah.
That's true too, yeah.
Back then, I mean, like, everybody had played all of the songs through and through, so it's kind of like if you picked one, it was almost as good as just choosing it at random. And so, yeah, that to me, that's the thing that sticks out the most, is like everybody kind of knew all the songs through and
Yeah.
through. It really affected the way qualifiers work too, I think. Like, nowadays qualifiers are kind of like a random off-brand chart, but back then it was kind of like something everybody knew already.
Yeah.
So that's our tournament history. So
Also, I think to contrast tournaments back then and now, like, now the competitive scene has been alive for so long that it's a lot more intense now. You know, like,
it is, yeah. Especially with Major League Gaming, I think, and stuff like that becoming a serious thing. It's like it's no longer just a community event. It's now kind of almost like a global thing.
Yeah.
Like now we're hearing about.
yeah. I mean,
Virginia Beach
we're
tournaments.
talking about this tournament that Andy ran.
Yeah, it's
and
on the other side of the country.
like, is that something that would have happened 10 years ago? That we would have, like, in California, that we're going to talk about a tournament that happened across the country?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So on that note, actually, if you want to talk about your first tournament, post in the chat or tweet at us at SF_evolved. We'd love to hear it. Maybe we'll talk about it on the show. Also, actually, if there are any, so we talk a lot about the East Coast and the West Coast. I think it'd be cool to hear about some, like, Texas players, Midwest players, North Dakota, South Dakota. If any of you guys are out there, send us a message in the chat or tweet at us. We should talk about your scene too.
Yeah.
So moving on, we also wanted to talk a little bit about, like, official tournaments versus community-run tournaments. There's a huge difference in the way that they're ran. There was, like, Digital Life, the official Konami tournament.
Yeah, there
from
haven't been
2009.
that many official tournaments.
No,
we
not
should
at all.
talk about them. They're very few and far between.
Yeah.
So can you tell me about Digital Life? Because I actually never heard about that one.
Yeah, did you go to the 2006 one?
I did not. But
you did
I
not.
just know that Steve
Oh,
Renales
right.
won the tournament.
Right. So
That was in the U.S.?
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it was in
at
New York.
New York City. It's Javits Center. I went to the Digital Life 2007, and that was right when Supernova was new or came out or recently or something. So they had a brand new Supernova machine at the Konami booth. They put it on a stage, which is a terrible idea. And it broke very quickly. After, like, there were sensors wrong. One of the speakers blew out. Like, Supernova was a bad time. But it was like an official Konami run tournament. So
Yeah. Oh, cool.
they, I think it was very similar to, it was just like a pick random, I think. But I know there have been other tournaments. There was the 2009 DDR National Championship.
Yeah.
Where I know they at least in New Jersey, when they did like the little regional qualifier there, they had a wheel, like a Ferris wheel type thing, and they spun it to determine like what song you were going to play. And there were 6 songs on the wheel. It was like,
What were they?
like Insertion, Dragon Blade, Red Zone, and
Fascination Max.
no, I don't think it was, no, because we were playing. I think we were playing on Supernova 2, but other qualifiers were being held on Supernova 1, so they didn't take Marvelouses into account on Supernova 2. So I was playing. I was second place in that tournament. I lost to my good friend Jimbo, and we kept tying on songs because we both AAA it.
Yeah.
Or perfect full combo it. But he would get he had much better MA than I did. So he'd have like 15 perfects and I'd have 25. And they were like, yep, you guys are even. Play another, like spin the wheel. And we kept spinning the same songs. And then eventually we hit Dragon Blade, which I'm bad at, and he beat me. But I was just like, what? This is ridiculous. Like, that's not how to run a tournament. And they spelled insertion wrong. They spelled it inserted on. And I'm like, come on, guys. Like,
well, I think their KAC tournaments are in a completely different league.
I mean, this was
value.
different. Like Konami of Japan versus Konami of America, obviously. And this was what, 8 years ago. Like, I'm sure they've learned a bunch. But it was very funny as like a tournament. I used to enter tons of tournaments on the East Coast. Yeah. And then going to the official DDR one was like,
There was also the official ITG national tournament in Las Vegas that happened. When was that? 2005?
Something like that. Yeah.
And that was actually run by Roxor.
Yeah. And that was a pretty big deal. I remember hearing a lot about that when that was going on.
They gave away a cab?
They gave away a cab, and I think Mike Quaintance won it.
Yeah.
Right?
So that
oh, that's a nice.
That would have been the coolest thing in the world to win a cab. Like,
I'm assuming
great job, Mike.
Assuming it was a Dedicab. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Dedicated cabinet for those of you that don't know.
Man, that like. I was just so used to tournaments just being, like you win like $150 if you win. Great. I mean, I was happy with that. I was like 16 or 17. Great.
That's a great difference between official tournaments and community-run tournaments. The official tournaments, the prizes are way better.
Well, except at KAC where they can't give away prizes.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
But
you get the best prize of all, honor, when you even place.
And a cool shirt.
Go
back and watch episode 1 if you want to see what the shirt looks like.
It's a very cool shirt.
So speaking of community-run tournaments, actually a lot of people in the chat are saying that the San Jose tournament was their first one.
That's great. That's great to hear.
That's really awesome.
That's
and
extremely.
We're going to try and have more tournaments. Hopefully, one soon, somewhere around here.
We got to negotiate with a couple, either David Musters or Round One. But I'm really excited to have more tournaments in the area.
Yeah,
I think it's like the best way to get better.
And if you were on the fence about whether to enter last time, definitely enter the next one. It's a great experience, and even if you go up and get creamed like we all did when we first entered our tournaments, like you just feel so good about the possibilities afterward.
And you learn about rivals. Like I think one of the best things about tournaments is figuring out like where you placed and who was similar to you. And sometimes you go up against someone who you didn't know before.
Exactly.
And your match was really close. Yeah. And it's like, okay, this person is actually someone.
It's a magical experience, I think, because you get bonded with the people you play against.
Yeah, totally.
And if it is a close match, then it's a kind of an emotional thing. That you make a friend, right?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
I played against JJK a couple of years ago at a Anime Expo DDR Extreme tournament.
Excellent.
And we just kept trading wins and losses, and then after that, we're constantly neck and neck, and it feels great.
Yeah.
So Zanzibar in the tournament or in the chat was asking, whatever happened to freestyle tournaments?
Freestyle. It's an interesting story. I feel like when I first got into DDR, I didn't really know about Score Attack, but I saw a bunch of videos online from California tournaments, and they were all freestyle, and they were doing some really cool stuff.
Yeah. That was the only thing people wanted to watch back in the days. Talking about the difference between old and new tournaments.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I think it very much has to do with what we were talking about with just people taking the tournament more seriously now, with the Major League Gaming atmosphere and.
Yeah, I think with freestyle, it's so much harder to judge. Yeah. When you watch a freestyle, when you watch someone do it, you're like, okay, by which metrics do I judge this thing? And I think with Score Attack, I mean, you get a number, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's which of these is easier to do? And people tend to gravitate toward the path of least resistance, which means Score Attack is just going to win by default, I think.
Yeah, totally. Sunnyvale Golfland in Sunnyvale in California was I watched videos on
a lot of legendary videos.
Those were some of my favorite freestyles are from that those tournaments that were held there. And I think it's just hard to. I think people just kept taking the game more and more seriously and working on scoring, and then the freestylers, there wasn't any new blood coming in to replace the people who were leaving. Yeah. And when you only have a tournament of 2 people, you don't have a tournament at all. Yeah. So eventually it's sort of it kills itself.
At that first tournament I went to, that MME2, the first freestyle match, or the first freestyle I ever saw was Chris Bodie, Kevin Bodie's brother, and his fiance or something, and it was just this amazing couples DDR thing, and I was like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish people were still doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun to watch. Yeah, so it's kind of an important part of actually like DDR tournament history or DDR history in general. So like I encourage you guys, if you've never seen like a freestyle tournament, go back and watch some of those like old SVGL videos on YouTube.
I have a couple recommendations.
I was gonna say Tampopo Arcade is a documentary on the Pigs website that is pretty good. Although actually it's kind of a bad documentary, but it shows a little bit about what the freestyle scene was like in the 90s, early 2000s. What's your recommendation?
Well, there's, I think it's like DJ 8-Ball and Samantha. They do a routine on synchronized love. That's one of my favorites. And for newer freestylists, there's actually a couple, I think there are a couple in Japan. They go by Panda-san Team, like Panda. So if you search for Panda-san Team, you might find some of their videos. And they are just absolutely incredible. They won the Pump It Up freestyle tournament at
Excellent.
The last WPF. And like,
oh yeah, they still do it at WPF.
Yeah. Because now that Pump is in Japan, they were like, oh, well, we'll enter the freestyle tournament for Pump.
That's
and
awesome.
They created an awesome routine. Like they are some of the best freestylers I've ever seen.
So speaking of Japan, actually, Matt Zubikowski in the chat says there's a freestyle tournament in Nagoya in August.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, that's I think that's yearly.
Wow.
And there was one actually in March, I think, in some arcade in Nagoya. But that might be the same one that I've seen Panda-san go to. But I think there's also one in Tokyo, at least. I know there's one. It was at Warehouse, the Warehouse.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Arcade that we went to a couple times.
Kawasaki Warehouse.
Kawasaki. Yeah, I was like, what's the name? Kawasaki Warehouse.
Kilo Brittany in the chat also said that there's freestylers at Dave & Buster's in Daly City.
Yeah, I
haven't
see
seen
it.
them.
I haven't seen that.
I haven't
Yes,
seen
you
them
have.
Really?
Yeah, I think maybe it's just part of like the DDR playing experience. So you don't even know what other people are doing because you just see it so often.
Maybe that's true.
But I feel like every arcade around here, I see at least one person every couple weeks doing it.
Yeah.
Definitely
So-
seems more common in Pump It Up, actually.
That's for
sure.
DDR.
Yeah.
Boy, yeah, Pump It Up, actually, just the way that the pads are laid out, much more expressive, I think, in the movements and stuff. So yeah, moving on, different tournament formats. We want to talk about some like pros and cons about different formats. We already talked kind of a little bit about
Yeah, we talked a little
card
bit about
draw.
it already.
Yeah. I think one thing, well, there's, I think, some up-and-coming styles, and also, like, one that's completely for one kind of tournament. So Gauntlet's an interesting style. With Gauntlet's basically that everyone's sort of playing the same songs, and you typically give some, like, strikes or something to the bottom performers. Sometimes you use, like, one strike, you're out, or if you're trying to do, like, a double elimination, then 2 strikes, you're out.
Yeah.
Which is great for sight read tournaments. And for anyone who's not aware of what sight reading tournaments are about, it's basically when no one has seen the chart before. That's works very well for...
This is typically only in the group.
Exactly, when
Yeah.
people are making their custom files. Suppose it could happen with...
It happened a lot with edits back in the day.
Yeah, I was just thinking. Like,
Yeah.
I've actually never been to an edit sight read tournament, but
Yeah.
that'd be cool, I think.
Yeah, we had a few in Ohio. They're
awesome.
pretty fun.
Yeah, so more commonly in the groove right now, but basically that way you kind of give everyone the same 3 songs or something they have to play, and you can judge them based on how well they placed. So really cool format, but it's sort of like you can't actually hold. Well, you can do KAC, which is also kind of Gauntlet,
Yeah, it's pretty gauntlet.
but it's a little bit different in that sense for other reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the KAC is more of like an exhibition style,
Yeah.
where it's more about they really just kind of want to show you all their crazy stuff and want to show you the best players. And
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's move on from tournament styles. Let's talk a little bit more about like preparing for a tournament and sort of like how to do it for yourself. So
Emotionally.
So for one,
tough.
actually, I kind of want to talk a little bit about consistency because this is a problem that I have. So like I feel like I can get some pretty good scores on some hard songs, but I'm definitely pretty bad at consistency. And actually, I've noticed that like watching other tournaments too, there's a lot of players that I've seen them get like post amazing scores, but then during the tournament they either choke or they're just not good at playing cold or stuff like that.
There's so much going on that
Yeah.
inside your head that it's really hard to do.
I think this is part of the illusion that we were talking about of thinking that you're like a lot better than you are.
Yeah.
It's like, you feel like you can try really hard on one particular song, get a good score one time, but consistency is like a whole nother skill that you have to practice for.
Yeah, Jeff's really good at consistency.
Yeah.
one of
Do you have any tips for us about how to be consistent?
I would say, well, I play almost every song. Like, sorry. I play a lot of different songs, and I think like having that breadth, like not focusing on one song for too long, typically helps your consistency, because if you only have one shot to play, like if I'm only going to pick one song on a given day, then I better be good at it.
Yeah.
So I tend to not like play the same song over and over and over again. So I think that's important. But also entering tournaments itself is a way to practice your consistency. I feel like I was very lucky growing up on the East Coast, in New Jersey specifically, because I was able to go to Ohio for Fort Rapids and other huge tournaments there. I went down
I
to
went to a
North.
few of those.
Yeah, did you go to 4? I think that's
I
the
was
only.
at 1 and 2.
Oh, okay. I wasn't at those. But I went down to North Carolina for Rocky Mount. So I did a couple of those. Pennsylvania, the Harrisburg tournaments. I had a bunch of experience there. And so there was just so many, like every month or 2 months, I was driving, a couple hundred miles to some tournament and getting to practice playing under pressure. I think the pressure is an important part of it. Like consistency, yes, but if you're like nervous about the crowd that's watching you,
Yeah.
or if you're like, oh man, I'm going to choke, or if I lose this song, like I'm out. I better do my best, and then you overthink it.
Yeah.
And now, it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy that, you have some negative feelings about stress, and it sort of it comes to haunt you.
Snowballs.
Yeah, exactly.
So in summary, your recommendation for consistency is just keep going to tournaments until it's no longer a new thing to you.
Yeah, I mean,
So it's like-
you're always gonna get nervous in a tournament. If you're like me,
Yeah.
like I'm terrified when I'm going up against someone that's very, very good.
Yeah.
At KAC, like my heart was pounding the entire time.
Yeah.
That's the biggest crowd I've ever seen watching a DDR tournament.
Yeah.
I think we could all say that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely some less broad things, more specific things I think that you could do. For me, what helps is not sitting down. I think is important if you want to stay warm.
That people are pretty split on that. Like
Yeah,
I know you don't
yeah.
sit down, and you don't even like when you're playing. You don't like just a casual day. You don't sit down.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
So I sit down all the time. I love sitting.
Yeah, I can't decide whether it's good or not.
sitting. Is
I'm
it
sitting
good?
right now, but later on I might not be sitting.
Tell us in the chat. What do you think about sitting? So,
I love it.
but yeah, actually, I mean, like seriously though, like sitting makes me cool down. I think pretty fast,
Yeah.
and I take a little while to warm up. And so one of the things I've been doing,
Yeah,
on,
playing
on
cold is always really hard about
Yeah, so like
tournaments.
for self practice, it's really uncomfortable in the beginning, but jump right into 15s in the beginning of your set.
Or jump.
I
I think for the skill level that you have, like my general warm up strategy whenever I'm playing DDR now is I play the hardest songs that I think that I can do pretty well on the first song of the day, and just to try and make myself get the blood flowing as quick as possible so I can move into doing, things that are harder than that. And I
Yeah.
think that's helped me a lot starting to play cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. For KAC practice, because basically we were told there's a very good chance you're not going to be able to warm up before the songs. And everything is like 17 plus. The only songs you can pick in KAC are at least a 17.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, how do I tackle this? And my solution was I'd go to the arcade and I'd pick an 18 or a 19. First song of the day. And I was bad at it, but I got to the point where, okay, I can like full combo an 18 when I'm cold. But that's a skill. It's certainly a skill.
Yeah,
and
it's hard to do.
It's just very easy to feel like, oh, I have to warm up. I have to, I want to get a few games in before I really push myself. But a lot of times what happens is you don't push yourself as hard as you could.
Yeah, and you only have so much time.
Exactly.
Like if I've been playing basically like 1 or 1.5 hour sessions, and if you only have that much time, you can't play 9s and 10s to warm up.
Yeah.
You just have to go straight into it.
Exactly.
So Zanzibar on Twitter is asking about rituals, supplements, or other pre-tournament workouts. What do you guys think about that? I know Roger, you have a lot of pre-tournament or pre-DDR sessions.
I try to eat the same meal configuration. Like I have to have a McFlurry for the extreme amount of sugar.
McFlurry.
I generally follow the McFlurry with like some sort of energy drink or a high caffeine situation, like Monster Ultra Zero. It's probably my favorite. But really, like I think I've had good DDR days or good tournament days, like when none of the rituals happen and when
Exactly.
all of the rituals happen. It really it's really all about how much you play, like whether when you're playing you're practicing things like staying like warming up really quickly, things like that. I think I mean everyone has the rituals. Do you have any rituals?
I don't really, yeah. I think in some ways I feel like an outlier. Like I don't eat particularly well before tournaments. Sometimes I've eaten Taco Bell or McDonald's, Or
I mean, it's simple carbohydrates. It gets right in there.
Man, so for those of you who aren't on the East Coast, Sheets is amazing, and we sort of like everyone like from North Carolina down like understands the beauty of Sheets, and so Harrisburg tournaments always. I guess they were also in Pennsylvania, but there weren't any in New Jersey. But so I'd go to the Harrisburg tournament, and there was like a Sheets connected to the mall, and I'd get like a sausage, egg, and cheese croissant every single time, and I think I won 2 or 3 of the tournaments that I played out there. And it was like that was the closest thing to a ritual I think I had. But I was just like, this food is like just fuel for whatever 12 I'm about to play in the groove.
So I think it has nothing to do with the physical. I think it's all mental. So like this ritual,
that's really.
It's not about what you ate exactly, but it's like because you eat the same thing beforehand, your brain is remembering the last time you did really well.
Yeah,
in a tournament.
I try to do like mindfulness meditation and stuff like
can
that.
help,
But you know, it's really all about like
staying positive,
getting into the mindset of doing well.
Yeah, or just being happy. I think being in a good mood. So like eat whatever makes you happy. I think that's probably the
that
best
might be
advice.
it. McDonald's does make me happy.
Yeah. So for me, actually, I kind of feel like I do better if I don't eat beforehand. I feel like food kind of weighs me down.
Yeah, and that's just proof that people are different, and also like sometimes it doesn't even really matter because I feel like if I don't eat a lot, then I'm not going to do well. But I know so many people like you who don't eat and they can still do amazingly. Like Dalton goes to the arcade all the time and he's like, "Oh, I haven't eaten yet," and he like busts out some crazy scores, and I'm like, "Okay, like,
so
where did the fuel come from?"
Exactly.
Then, you know?
It differs from person to person. So what about sleep? I think at least sleep is
That's
very
probably
important.
the most important thing.
Most important thing. I definitely find that like I'm doing really bad if I can't focus. You know, sleep. That seems like a really obvious thing.
I don't think I've had like sleep problems before a tournament, but KAC was. I woke up in a cold sweat at like 4 in the morning, the morning of KAC, and I couldn't fall asleep. I was up at like 5:30 in the morning during KAC, like jet lag plus like intense nerves. So and I still did okay-ish. So. I don't know. Like I think sleep is definitely important. I like to try to get. I think like having a rigid schedule is better than like I sleep like crap throughout the week, but the last day, like the night before a tournament, I'm going to sleep 8 hours. Like no, you should probably like just sleep 8 hours every night if you can, and that way you'll be prepared. Like
definitely,
it's you can't like catch up on sleep like that, like so close to a stressful event in your life, regardless of if it's a tournament.
And really this kind of just feeds back into what we were just saying about the mental state, where like, if you don't have a lot of sleep, you're probably not going to be in a good mood. Not in a good mood, probably not going to do that well.
Yep.
So,
I agree. Pretty much. So we talked about playing good cold. So kind of going into our next topic, actually, as we're going towards the end of the show, I just want to remind everybody that we're still taking questions, and we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. Be nice if it was about tournaments, but it could be about anything.
Yeah, really anything.
So tweet at us at SF_evolved or post in the chat and be a part of the discussion. So up next, before we get to that, wanted to talk about running a tournament a little bit. So if anybody wants to actually start running a tournament, what is kind of the first steps? As someone with experience with that, with Best of the West and stuff.
So to give some context, I ran and helped run Best of the West, which is a tournament series that I created with Mark Johnson, another Bay Area player. And it was sort of like an amalgamation. So it had like DDR, 2DX, Poppin', because we held it at Sunnyvale Golfland.
Great tournaments.
Thank you. We held it at Sunnyvale Golfland, and they had like every machine. So it was very easy to do like 10 tournaments in one weekend. It was possible to do 10 tournaments in one weekend. It was definitely not easy. But yeah, so I've sort of, I've tried to think a lot about what makes tournament competitively you want to have integrity in your tournament. Like you want to make sure that it doesn't really matter if you played the first match or the last match. Sort of the arbitration stayed the same throughout. The rules were consistent throughout. Like, you can't, if you have a friend that's playing and they got a pad miss. They're like, you're my friend. Why don't you recalc that for me? I stepped and got a marvelous. You've seen me done it before. Like you can't give anyone preferential treatment. So it's a little bit hard to get in that mindset of like you really need to be rigid and firm, because a lot of it's easy to be like, just for this one time I'll let it slide, but as soon as you do that, then you have to let it slide for everyone.
Yeah.
And so
I also want to mention actually that having really strict rules too actually makes everyone get along better.
Yeah.
Even though you have to be kind
because
of
you
firm.
you know what's going on.
Yeah.
There's no leeway in anything.
Exactly.
People feel like they're not getting their toes stepped on because there's always going to be, like, if you're the tournament organizer, you're going to be the arbitrator, you're going to be the final say.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so everybody actually ends up getting along better if you do that.
Yeah.
So even though it feels like counterintuitive.
Yeah, one thing that one of my mantras has been that if people are going to feel badly about a tournament, then they should feel bad at me, the tournament organizer, not the other players.
Yeah.
So it's very important, especially from a community building standpoint, that if two people are playing a match and one of them, gets a pad miss or something, which happens sometimes, if that's very good. We should have a whole hour about move over for Supernova. But basically, if that player turns to their opponent and say, like, will you let me recalc that? Come on, let's redo it. And then now the onus is on the other participant to be like, no, because I won, or yes, I'm trying to be a nice person. Whereas in that situation, I would, as the tournament organizer, be like, no, you can't do it, or yes, you can. And then whoever's mad is mad at me and not their opponent.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, it's just super important because I've seen tournaments get run where the tournament organizer is a little bit timid about things and sort of lets an angry person walk over them. And then you have this problem where someone's like, well, you made such a big fuss about that thing, and now I'm not friends with you. Which you never want to have. Tournaments are supposed to bring people together, not
it's really
create
all
that
about
animosity.
making people more better friends than they were before.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But arbitration and stuff like that's always going to get in the way.
Yeah.
So it's important to have someone who you can, they can join together and be mad at one person for a call they didn't agree with.
Yeah.
It's kind of it is very counterintuitive, like you said, James.
Yeah.
As far as running tournaments goes, I think if you've never run a tournament before and you want to run a tournament, it's not that hard nowadays. I remember back in the day, people had a hard time trying to figure out how to design brackets and stuff. But nowadays, it's really easy.
Yeah.
Like the website challonge.com, CHALLONGE.com, has a really great way to just have a gaming tournament, and you just plug people's names in and you're good to go. And so talk to your local arcade management, say, hey, we want to have a DDR tournament on your machine or a Pump It Up tournament on your machine or whatever, and we'll give you some of this entry fee and we'll take some of this money for the prize, and we'll invite a bunch of people to come to your arcade and spend a bunch of money.
Yep.
And usually they'll go for it. So I think it's a great way to kind of kickstart the community in your area if nothing's going on. I encourage everyone out there to run tournaments. If there's nothing going on in your area, just do it yourself.
Yeah, totally.
So I also want to mention actually that there's a lot of arcades out there now are kind of owned by big chains like Dave & Buster's and Round One. But we've held tournaments at Dave & Buster's and
Yeah,
Round
so
One.
they're
receptive.
cooperative.
There's nothing to be intimidated about with even I know I kind of thought initially these are just big businesses. They're not going to care about the community at all. But it turns out they do actually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean they want to make money too.
Yeah, I want to shout out the Dave & Buster's Irvine crew because when a tournament was held there, I decided to drive down just a couple months after Ace came out in the States, and they brought out the fanfare. They had trophies made for us.
Wow.
They had staff that was dedicated to helping the people that were running the tournament. So, they brought that thing where you take pictures. It says Dave & Buster's logo everywhere, but they made it feel like a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they gave away really good prizes. For a $15 entry, you got a $15 game card and $15 that you could use in food or something. So even if you didn't even know what DDR was, you go up to the counter and say, I want to enter a DDR tournament. You pay them $15 and you get $30 worth of Dave & Buster's stuff. So immediately it was a good deal. So there was no reason not to enter.
Yeah.
And then they gave away, gift cards for Dave & Buster's credits for people who won. And that's just
I hope they do it again. I'd love to go down for
amazing.
Irvine tournament.
Yeah, I know there's something in the planning stages. I can't speak too much about it, but hopefully that's coming soon for anyone in the SoCal area. Or get a caravan of people from Vegas or NorCal. I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be getting Roger in a car and Buzzard in a car, and we're going to drive down, whatever.
So speaking of hearing about tournaments, Peter Vera on Twitter wants to know, how do you hear about tournaments before they happen?
It's a good question. I hope this show is one way.
Yeah.
Sort of at the end of every show, I hope we can sort of conclude with future things that are going on, things in your area you might be interested in.
And if you know of anything, post in the chat or tweet at us, and we can mention it on the show.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So we knew about the Virginia Beach tournament that just happened through like Facebook. A lot of it's through Facebook invites now. It used to be on forums, but everything has moved over to Facebook.
And Champions of the Coast is coming up soon too.
Yeah, that's in August.
There's a couple of groups, I guess, that we could shout out. So there's the DDR Players group on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's how I hear a lot about a lot of news.
Yeah.
If you just follow a lot of DDR players on Twitter, like Twitter's a great place for that, I think, because like you can it's not like a friend request or anything. You just start following people that you're interested in. They're posting scores and stuff. And a lot of times they're going to tweet about a tournament in their area.
Yeah.
Totally, that's true too. Bamani Style sometimes posts about tournaments that are coming up.
Yep.
So
and Dave Lee's DDRcommunity.com.
Exactly.
So that's ddrcommunity.com and bmonistyle.com.
Yeah.
So
those would be good to
great
check out
resources.
for any news about not just DDR but other things as well.
Yeah. So that's definitely how I hear about it. It's mostly through social media. So yeah, be a player on social media. Just a little side thing. There's a lot of talk about McFlurries.
Oh, the
Somebody wants to
McFlurry.
know what your favorite flavor
Which
McFlurry
one?
is.
So I feel like the only one that really exists in the Bay Area for some reason is the Oreo McFlurry. And the
Wrong.
Oreo McFlurry is great.
That's the only one that
honestly.
comes to mind, really.
I really like the Reese's, but Reese's seems rare.
There's a Reese's?
There is a Reese's. Right now, McDonald's has the Rolo McFlurry, which is good.
Interesting.
I prefer the Oreo, personally.
I like the M&M.
Nice.
I don't know. Am I in the minority here? I like M&Ms.
I like it too.
Thanks, Dalton.
Too chocolatey, I think.
Oreo's not chocolately enough. But
No, Oreos.
I like the Oreo McFlurry because it reminds me of TV static or ones and zeros. You got the contrast of the nothing and the something.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah, I agree.
You're gonna have to take a second to
it's
get over
It's
that.
the most cyber McFlurry.
It's the most cyber McFlurry, especially since Oreo is not something that exists in nature. It's a man-made thing.
Oh my
So-
god. Okay, so if there was any doubt about this being a live show or anything, like, this is not scripted at all. Very good.
We
Roger.
are live.
Thank you.
So moving on, also having to do with running a tournament, Zanzibar on Twitter wants to know what are some good prizes that you could offer, besides maybe cash, so like shoes, workout gear, streaming equipment, maybe?
I think that there's a real opportunity that a lot of people haven't taken in the past with tournaments where, like, if you're organizing a tournament and you're down to, like, put some of your own money into the prize pool, maybe buy something for the prize. Like, say, like, you know, maybe a pair of shoes or shirts. Shirts are always great. Like, make some merch for your tournament. Like, people are going to be wearing that for years, at least to go to bed, you know? So it's like, it's good for brand identity. It's also good for just reminding people to play DDR all the time.
True, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, like, I mean, like, if you can get your Dave & Buster's around one to, like, chip in and get, like, an iPad or used to be like an iPod might have been a good, iPads are kind of expensive, I guess.
Yeah.
But, like, something, I don't think I would offer shoes because, like, you can't guarantee size.
Sizing.
You workout clothes, same thing. Like, a lot
Towel?
of people, a towel might be cool.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff. I like cold hard cash. I think
cash is good.
I think a lot of times it's like a $10 or a $15 entry fee, and like $5 goes to the venue, $10 goes to the pot.
Yeah.
I think that's a good, and then like you do some sort of split for first, second, and third, usually 60%, 30%, 10%. And so,
Well, cash is cool, but I kind of like having a timepiece to sort of
yeah,
remember
no,
the
I
tournament.
will definitely get trophies.
Yeah, trophies.
I think
or
trophies
some
or
kind of
medals.
commemorative something.
Something that people want to hold on to.
I have a ton
David,
of trophies.
David made medals for the last tournament.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and I have that hanging in my room now. So I
That's
have a
great.
whole thing where I have a bunch of dance game trophies I won over the years.
Yeah.
How is that funny? That's fun.
Yeah, it's great.
Shout outs to Jimbo, because Jimbo made like the most badass trophies, and I still own them. I still keep them by my bed.
All right, so we're going to transition now. Towards the end of the show, we're going to start our Q&A session. So if you have any questions for us, tweet at us at SF_evolved or post in the chat.
I think there was a question just now.
Yeah, so there is a question. So we have a question from the chat. What is the best way to promote a tournament? Facebook, I guess? What would you do?
Talk to us.
We should talk about one issue with these big companies having the DDR machines, I guess, is Dave & Buster's won't allow unofficial signage up in the store.
Yeah, that's
right?
one thing we found out was there was no way for us to say like, hey, DDR tournament either here or elsewhere or anything without corporate approval. So things can get a little bit bogged down in the corporate sense. It's nice to have some sort of signage at your local arcade where it's happening because obviously people who are coming there will be like, oh, hey, that's happening on Saturday. I'll go.
Yeah. I think that really it's the world we live in now where we have social media, like it's probably easier than ever to promote things. So if you can put up a flyer in your arcade, that's great. But at the very least, add everyone that you talk to at the arcade on Facebook and spam them all with your tournament information. That's just the way to go.
And yeah, if you have like if you do play DDR in like a small arcade, I think they would probably allow some kind of signage.
Yeah.
So I think that's most effective. I used to hear about a lot of tournaments through just like a printed out page.
And talk to the community
people
organizers like DDR Community, Bimani Style, SF Evolved. Like talk to us.
Yeah, we'll shout you out if you have a tournament.
We'll retweet you. We'll post about it. So it's
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so go through us. That's the answer. So we have another question from Twitter. Have you guys ever entered tournaments for any other games, like fighting games or pinball or anything like that? Has that been an experience for you?
I've entered ITG tournaments.
That counts. I would
and
say.
and a pump tournament once. Although, yeah, I got completely owned. So yeah, mostly dance game tournaments.
Yeah.
I would
used to
say.
enter. So Champions of the Coast is a tournament series that I sort of tried to model Best of the West after, which was is at 8 on the break, and so they also have a ton of our Konami's music games, right? So I think it was Champions of the Coast, then Kings of the Coast, then Champions again. They sort of rebranded. But I went to Kings of the Coast 2 and 3, and I think I entered everything, all the different tournaments they had. So wasn't very good at Poppin', but I entered Poppin'. I wasn't very good at Pump, but I entered Pump.
Yeah.
And I've actually entered a few Technica tournaments because I was pretty serious about Technica in the time that I moved to California and didn't play DDR because I couldn't find working machines.
Yeah, there weren't any for a while.
Technica was actually like the big new thing. So one of the reasons I kind of broke into the music game community in the Bay Area was I went to a Technica tournament and met everyone. And so that was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I have attended some pinball tournaments in my day, and actually, I think even though it doesn't have anything to do with DDR, it just like what you were saying about just going to as many tournaments as you can helps because all that skill kind of transfers over. The skill of just tuning out the crowd and playing while you're nervous, stuff like that. Yeah. So like if you're into something else, I would say go to as many tournaments for that as possible. It's going to make you better at DDR tournaments too. So Void in the YouTube chat asked, help for getting better at stamina.
Stamina. That's a hard one.
That's a hard one, especially for tournaments. So like just play for a long time.
Yeah, I think in line with what we were saying earlier about pushing yourself sooner and quicker, like it's going to be harder to get better at stamina if you're warming up on 11 footers, and by the end of the day you're like you can do 18s or something, and you close off the day with a 16.
Yeah.
If you're not really pushing yourself quickly and early in the process, then you're not going to build up as much stamina.
Pretty much every guide on how to get good at things, everything that I've ever read on like, how to become an expert at something or like how to stretch yourself in any kind of like athletic experience is like, you basically, when you're trying to get better, when you're trying to when you're trying to up your limit, you have to stretch yourself. You have to like go past the point where you think you can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, so you have to keep playing DDR until you're so tired that you can't play anymore, and then you have to keep playing.
It's true.
You have to like when you're thinking that I can't play another song, then you have to keep playing the hardest stuff you can play.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a period of time, I'll tell from personal experience, in like early 2016 when I started doing that. And so what I was doing was I was kind of like working all the way up until I really couldn't play anymore, and then I got a second wind. This is like a real thing that athletes get, I guess. And once you get to your second wind, I think that's when you really start to see improvements.
Yeah.
So yeah, I basically started playing PSMO like 3 times in a row for a long time. And it's
just what you got to do.
Eventually,
whatever skill level you're at, just constantly push yourself.
Yeah, just constantly push yourself. And I think a word of encouragement too is like, it actually does last for a long time. Like you do start to lose your stamina if you don't play for a while, but a good running start really can last for quite a while.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's really all about training.
It's being rigorous about
being
things.
rigorous
I think.
about
Like
it, yeah.
a lot. It's very easy. I think the biggest thing that's like catapulted me into being good at dance games was being very rigorous about things and being very focused. When I went to the arcade, I had goals,
Yeah.
and I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to play a bunch of my favorite songs right at the beginning. No, I'm here to work.
Yeah.
So whether or not that's fun for everyone, that's kind of a different different episode. But
What is fun anyway?
what was fun for me was seeing improvement in numbers
Yeah.
and seeing my scores go up and being able to push the limits of what I could do. So I was like dead set on that every time I went to the arcade. So even though I didn't play for like, a ton of time or I didn't go every day,
Yeah.
I was very focused when I did go. So it's easy to get into traps where you're like, oh, I love Struggle, I'm just going to play Struggle again. But if you've already PFC'd it, move on. Like play another 13
Yeah.
that's harder. Play a 14 that's harder. Play an 18. Do it.
You can ease your way into it too. You
Totally.
don't have to jump right in.
Yeah.
So Zanzibar on Twitter is asking about bad tournament experiences, like broken pads or like a bad monitor. I know you did tell me something. Was it Digital Life about the Supernova, brand new Supernova?
Oh yeah,
cam?
yeah, the brand new Supernova. That I was playing PSMO. Someone picked it on me, and my speaker blew out halfway through the song. Like very just poor cabinet production for many reasons. We all sort of tried to tell the organizers that you need to break in cabinets a little bit, and they didn't listen to us. It also didn't help it was on stage. So that was kind of, I wouldn't say that was necessarily a bad experience, but it was certainly not ideal. I think I haven't had any truly bad experiences, like besides losing when I thought I should have won or something like that. But I
Yeah.
have seen a bunch of like heated arguments with tournament organizers over someone gets a pad miss
Yeah,
and
I
like
think the rules
30
set
minutes
thing.
you
Yeah.
decide on what to do about
Yeah,
it.
you
And
really
someone's
got to
upset
keep
about
the
it.
rules firm.
But even then, I mean, it's hard to be the arbiter, right? Like you have to sometimes say to someone like, okay, this person said they got a pad miss. They usually don't get one, so we're gonna have to redo it. And then you're like, I have to play this again. I just did my best on it, and you're asking me to do that again.
Yeah.
And I already should have won, So like tensions get high, and sort of it can be anywhere from kind of awkward to watch to like really disheartening because someone who's really obviously passionate about this thing gets really upset.
Yeah, I think I can't really recall that many like bad experiences. I think the organization of tournaments sometimes can be the bad experience where like maybe it just goes on way too long.
Yeah.
Like I've been at tournaments until like 3 a.m. before.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, yeah, I love DDR, but sometimes being at the arcade from 10 a.m. to 3 a.m. is like you just kind of want to get out of there. And
Totally.
so it's like it's really mostly about trying to make sure that it's run smoothly. I mean, you can't expect it to go perfectly, but I think those are my only bad experiences.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So we have one more question, and then I think we're going to start wrapping up. We kind of briefly talked about site read tournaments, but I was wondering if somebody's asking in the chat if you could go into a little bit more detail about what a site read tournament is.
Sure. I'll try to clarify again. So basically, let's say I'm actually holding a site read tournament soon. So this is on an In the Groove machine or a Stepmania based machine. So I'm basically hiding a bunch of songs and their associated steps from everyone, all my friends. I really want to share all this great music that I've found, but can't. So no one has, I can't guarantee that no one's heard the songs, but certainly no one's seen the steps before. And I'm sort of organizing them into rounds. And what's going to happen is when you enter my tournament, you'll have to play like 3 songs. And you've never seen them before. And that's why it's a sight read tournament. Anything you haven't seen for the first time is a sight read, as we call it. So basically, it's very close to testing a bunch of stuff that normal tournaments would test. But you have to test things like reading on the fly and an unfamiliar pattern that you might not be used to. You know, if you rely on memorization to know, oh, I need this crossover I can cheat, but this crossover in this other song I can't.
Yeah.
You know, when you're like reading for the first time one of my files, you don't know that up front. So you have to really adapt on the fly. Or if there's a slowdown that you don't know the song, so you don't know what's about to slow down. Being able to immediately like have the reaction time of like stepping on an arrow, oh my god, it's slow, I need to adjust the BPM that I'm playing the song at internally.
Yeah, I think a good way to get good at sight read tournaments too is obviously sight read more stuff. So like play songs that you don't normally play a lot. Play more ITG, I guess, is a good way.
There's a lot of stuff there, yeah.
So download some packs that you've heard are good and you want to try.
Yeah, but sight reading is just so much fun because it's everyone's kind of on a level playing field. It really tests your skill at the game and your reading ability, and less about like, oh, I've played this song 100 times, and so I'm really good at it.
Yeah.
It's if anyone plays Magic or other sorts of card games, there's like the whole sealed thing where like everyone gets like 6 packs or something, and you make a deck with that. And I like those a lot more than the ones where people have spent $800 on a deck and they crush me with it because there's all these synergies and stuff. Like being able to adapt on the fly and be like, oh, these cards work well together, but no one has like super crazy rares because it's just what you open in a pack. Statistically, you're not going to have the good cards.
So really, it's just about like testing your skill on something that you've never seen before.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're really fun too because it kind of removes an element of tournaments that people are normally testing, like game knowledge.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think
exactly.
with tournaments with different formats like sight read tournaments, you get people who make it further into the tournament than would otherwise.
exactly.
So you get different people winning. You get a lot of interesting matches you wouldn't get otherwise.
Yeah, that was my experience actually at the last Bubble Tea Invitational. It was a very similar experience. All right, so I think that's all that we have for tonight. Are there any other upcoming events that we want to mention?
I think we've covered Champions of the Coast.
Champions of the Coast is coming up.
And look out for some Bay Area tournaments and some SoCal tournaments soon. I think.
Yeah, and we really do want to hear from you guys in the Midwest or Texas or anything like that.
Yeah. Please hold tournaments.
Yeah, hold
and
some tournaments.
Tell us about them.
Yeah, because I'm sure everyone's sick of hearing about the West Coast and the East Coast. It's like there's a whole bunch of dance gamers kind of all over the country and the world too. Actually, if you're in Europe or something, tell us about some tournaments happening there because we actually don't know a whole lot about the Europe scene. So yeah, let us know. So that's all that we have for tonight. So I just want to say thanks for watching and
Thank you for playing.